Did you know that about 90% of people starting to learn to code end up quitting over time? Yeah, it's a staggering number. I had no idea that the percentage of people was so high. So why do so many people end up struggling to learn to code? Well, let's dive in together and try figuring it out. And also, I'll do my best to share as many ideas and experience-based tips so you do not end up in those 90% of people who will end up quitting over time. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, my name is Marco and I'm talking about programming, JavaScript and ASP.NET Core. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to stick around and in this video, learn what are the most common reasons why people fail to become programmers. I know it sounds harsh, but you've heard the statistics. It's terrible. So many people are failing to stick around for long enough so they become one of our colleagues. And the main goal of this video is to maybe add a few more people to the set of 10% that are people who successfully manage to pull things off and become great developers. Let's start with a big one, the fear of failure. I want you to picture this scenario. You are sitting in front of your computer and you want to do some coding. You decided that you want to start coding, learn, and embrace it as much as you can. And you have opened your IDE and you're staring at it and it's staring back at you. And at this point, in our brains, questions like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I don't have it within me to become an amazing developer? Or why is this so hard for me? Maybe I'm not smart enough. And questions of those sorts, well, if you hear that little voice in your head, maybe if you start listening to it, it is right. I mean, if you start listening to it, it definitely is right. But it is in your power to say, no, I'm not one of those people, I am good enough. Because most people are, actually. It's not that difficult, it just requires a lot of time and effort and dedication. Most people are smart enough to do it. And also, there is one catch. The failure that we all have to go through is actually the path to growth and learning. That is how we learn, that is how we grow, that's how we master new concepts. By trying to incorporate them, failing at it miserably, and then learning our lessons from those failures and that way becoming better. In small incremental steps. Meaning that every bug, every error message or exception is pushing you one step closer to your goal of becoming an amazing developer. So I want you to not allow that little voice in your head saying that you're not good enough to win over that discussion and make you think that you really are not good enough. Because, as I told you, you probably are. And the fact that you are watching this video means that you do have the desire to pull through the pains and struggles and get out as a winner in this fight against yourself. I remember the first time when I ended up looking at the screen with a gazillion errors barking at me, and I was like, that's it. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not good enough, smart enough. I cannot possibly figure out what is the problem here. But after quite a few hours of debugging, and even days sometimes you just need a fresh perspective on the problem, you basically end up figuring out what was causing the issue and you fix it. And then at that point, you are feeling like you're unbeatable.
I'm the best around!
And that, after countless time of repeating that same process, was basically what taught me that making mistakes is basically just the beginning of you becoming great at something. And over time, the mistakes will not go away. Trust me when I say this. Even now, after 8 years of hardcore work, I'm still making very serious mistakes, and I still struggle to figure out how to build something or implement some feature. because that's what programmers do. It's your job to figure out how to teach this stupid machine in front of you that has no idea what to do with its power of CPU. It is your job to let it know, well, with this number, I want you to do this. If you are one of those people, a few people, that were following along throughout the entire journey of this YouTube channel, you will know that I was mentioning already that in the beginning of my career, before I landed my first job as a developer, I was building quite a few games that I was using as my portfolio to prove to companies that I'm actually good enough for their time and money. And basically, in the process of building those games, I was constantly, and when I say constantly, I really mean it, it's not exaggeration. It's really every single day I was stuck at something. I was feeling incredibly dumb about some issue that I was unable to solve, but day by day, I was progressing slowly, and game after game, app after app, I was building up my portfolio. And also what I did was, when I would get stuck with something or I needed to implement some feature that I had no idea how to make, I would just Google it, and then my best friend Stack Overflow at a time would give me a piece of code that I would just pull out, paste into my project, and then when things stopped working and were blowing up all over the place, I was wondering like, what went wrong? What did I do wrong? I did everything perfectly, even though I pasted the code that I had no idea what it does or how it does it, and then I was complaining about the fact that it's not working as I expected it. Well, that, my friend, is the journey to figuring out how to be a good developer. Okay, the second point I have for you is feeling overwhelmed by choices. We'll start this one with a question. Have you ever encountered a situation where you enter the bookstore and go to programming section? You are probably greeted with hundreds and thousands of books, or when you Google learn programming, you are greeted by, again, thousands and hundreds of thousands of books that are all about learning to code. And at that point, it is perfectly normal to feel overwhelmed because you don't know where to start, you don't know what is the best thing you can do in the current moment with your current experiences, and there is no way to figure it out. It's something like a kid being in a candy store and not being able to decide which candy it wants to eat. Well, in this case, instead of candy, it's books and materials for learning, and the kid is basically you. And instead of sugar rush, you feel analysis paralysis because you don't know what to pick and where to start from. And here's the trick. Just pick one. Seriously, do not overthink it. Just pick one programming language and stick with it. You can certainly do some general investigation where you will basically figure out in which general direction of programming you see yourself going. It's something like whether you want to do assembly development or operating system or web development or game development or something other than that. And then when you get that information, which, by the way, you can find in this video that I made before, and then when you do have that information, you can do some additional research about the programming languages that are related to that area, and here's some general overviews about them, and then based on that information, you will be as good as you possibly can on making a decision which programming language you should pick. Do not get me wrong, you will probably over time find a language that will suit your preferences and needs better, but you need to pick one and stick with it until you become good enough so you would be able to figure out what works for you better. In my experience, when I was getting started with programming, I couldn't for the life of me decide whether I wanted to go with C# or Java. Those were two languages that were fairly similar, but still very different, and they used entirely different IDEs, syntax was different, it was similar but different, and I couldn't figure out which way to go. And I was constantly trying to apply for jobs and I was pulled back and forth by going to a single job interview where they were like, C# is the best way to go, and then I would prepare for C#. Then another company that works with Java would call me up on an interview and be like, Java is way better than C#, and then I would go to Java and keep learning and reminding myself, refreshing my memory, building something in it, and then I would be invited to C# interview again and be like, okay, screw this, I'm going to pick C# and stick with it. I decided that I wanted to pick C# because I enjoyed Visual Studio as IDE way more than I did Eclipse at a time, because it offered so much more and it was way more comfortable for me, which is why I decided that that is the road I'm going to take, and I'm not going to go to Java interviews anymore. I was not invited to any, luckily. I would probably go because I was so desperate to land a job, but things worked out well. And now you might be wondering why I'm talking about this. Well, because it's very important to be aware that you cannot share your focus on two completely different paths and be great at both. When you're just beginning, it is essential to pick one path and stick with it. That is the only way you will become good enough to get your first job and to do it as quickly as possible. So, the moral of the story is, pick one thing that you will stick with. Maybe you want to pick Python if you want simplicity and out-of-the-box functioning stuff, or maybe you want to go with my path, that is ASP.NET Core mixed with JavaScript on the front end. It is completely within your grasp to decide what to do. But just remember, do not try to learn multiple things at the same time. Focus is your best friend. Alright team, it's time to talk discipline. If I was supposed to pick just a single point out of this and next video, it would be discipline. I think it would have the highest impact on our careers and our success rate to becoming a programmer. Because when you think about it, it is such a huge problem nowadays to be disciplined. Because basically we have everything at our disposal. You want some food? It will be on your doorstep within a few minutes. You want a date? You can just use an app and find it very quickly. You want to look nice? You can just use some filters and ta-da! There is a six-pack for you. This might seem like utopia to you right now, but if you think about it and look at the statistics, more people than ever are feeling anxious and depressed than ever before. That is because making yourself a disciplined person will always make you feel confident when a new problem arrives at your doorstep. You'll feel like, well, I've figured out how to solve this, and this. I'll probably be able to handle this problem myself without any issues and still live to tell the story about it. Well, if you have no real issues and real situations where you need dedication and discipline to pull through, you do not have that voice that is going to tell you that you are good enough because you have concrete evidence that you were good enough before. Which is why working on your discipline is very important. And basically why I'm saying this is because coding will require serious discipline out of you to actually become a good developer. It is the same as going to the gym. The results will not start showing up immediately after you went to the gym, started lifting some weights. Well, your muscles will not be there after you get out of the gym. It takes months and even years to see the results we want. It is the same with programming. And this is where most people slip about learning to code. They treat it as a sprint, not a marathon, because learning to become a great programmer is a super ultra marathon. It takes years to make it till the end of the journey. And it's even not the end even there because you still have to learn new stuff. So what I want you to do here is set a fixed schedule about your learning and dedicate time to it so that when a new Netflix series gets out, you do not bail on your learning schedule for programming. That is because now, more than ever, are people entering this industry, and there are some people who are seriously dedicated and hardworking and are like, I'm never going to give up. And trust me when I say this, those people will enter the industry and be great in it, because that is what is required to become a great developer. And there is only one more thing that I want to end this point with, and that is a pro tip. The best way, in my personal experience, to learn to code is to make a schedule and make a lot of small incremental steps for yourself. So if you have a lot of courses on becoming a C# developer, you should break them up into days, weeks, months, and make a plan and then stick to it till the end. Trust me, future self will thank you for sticking with this approach. Now, point number 4, which is a lack of motivation. Motivation is a fickle thing, isn't it? And one day you are pumped up and ready to code for hours without a single water break. But tomorrow, you don't feel like it. You don't want to open your IDE and do anything at all. Are you looking for a secret that will solve this problem for you? Well, it's very simple. Do not rely solely on motivation, because motivation will put you through those ups and downs in your output. Discipline, on the other hand, will make your output pretty consistent. You will, of course, have better and worse days, but discipline is what is going to push you to stick to your plans and not give up. And after all, in the end of the day, that is the only thing that matters. In the previous point, I already told you that motivation is not good enough to push you through the marathon. Can push you through a sprint or two, but marathon it cannot help you with. There is only so much that motivation can help us pull through. As I already mentioned, learning to code is like a marathon that lasts for years. So being good at it must require discipline, not motivation. So what the main point here is even when you get your first job and you start feeling invincible because you managed to complete your task, you are still far from done. You want to become a developer that is going to always have no issues to land a new job. And to do that, you must constantly do your best to learn and grow and gain experiences, because that is the only way you will get to a point where you do not have to worry about your next job. You know that whenever you want a new job, you can get it, and to do it quickly, without waiting for months, even years to land the next opportunity. I have to say, it's much better to have recruiters fighting over you and which company you are going to pick to work for. But that takes a lot of effort and investment of time. And to manage to pull through all of those struggles, you have to figure out what works for you as a motivation. Because even if you are very disciplined and dedicated to becoming a developer, it's always nice to be also motivated, because in the end of the day, you will be more productive. And when you have those ups and downs in motivation, you will still be disciplined, but you will still have the highs of motivation days at your disposal working for you. So for me personally, the motivation was the fact that I wanted really so much to make something of my own, to build my projects, to be able to earn money without having to work for any company. And that is what pushed me out of the bed every morning and made me work really hard on my dream. But that is just me. For you, it can be just sticking around in a job you like, or maybe learning enough to be able to always land a new job, or to build something on your own, or whatever makes you happy and satisfied. You just need to search your feelings and figure out, where do you see yourself in the future? And the answer will jump at you. Now, I think this was enough for one video. I think we discussed a lot of valuable things, and we can continue in the next video. So if you do not want to miss it, please feel free to like this one and subscribe to the channel. That way, you will get notified about the next upload, and you will be able to continue watching about the reasons why people fail to become great programmers. Thank you for watching. and have an amazing day. Happy coding!